You know, Europe's colonial past, it can feel like something straight out of a history book, right? Ancient history. But what if I told you it's not? What if it's actually a ghost in the machine, secretly pulling the strings, shaping the continent's present and even its future? Let's dig in. Just think about it for a second. A single, unified European army. The power of Germany, the reach of France, the grit of Poland, all rolled into one. A true global superpower that could finally stand on its own 2 feet, without having to rely on America for its own defense. It's a pretty powerful idea, isn't it? Well, here's the crazy part. This wasn't some daydream. It was the original plan. A united European army was so close, I mean so close, to becoming a reality. Which begs the question, what on earth happened? What went wrong? This is the story of Europe's ghost army. And figuring out why this incredibly ambitious plan just vanished? Well, that's the key to finding the ghost in the machine that's been haunting Europe for decades. So check out how fast this whole dream fell apart. 1952, the treaty is signed. The foundation is laid for a military superpower. But just 2 years later, bam, France pulls the plug and the whole thing comes crashing down. The result today? Instead of one mighty oak tree, you've got 27 tiny, inefficient bonsai armies, leaving Europe pretty much dependent on the United States for security. So what was it? What was so powerful that it could completely derail the military future of an entire continent? What was this ghost in the machine we keep talking about? And the answer, believe it or not, is the legacy of empire. French leaders at the time were terrified that a unified European army wouldn't be willing to do the dirty work of holding on to their colonies. I mean, would a German soldier really be up for cracking down on protests in Algeria? Would a Dutch private fire on rebels in Indochina? The French decided probably not, and they killed the treaty right then and there. The ghost of empire had spoken. And you know, that decision wasn't just about military strategy. Oh no, it really gets at this deep psychological hangover from colonial times, a kind of phantom limb of empire that for some still aches today. To really get this mindset, you have to appreciate the sheer scale we're talking about. Just a century or so ago, European powers ruled over a third of the entire world's population. To go from that to just being a regional power, that's a really tough adjustment. And for some, it's an adjustment they've never really made. And this leads to some pretty strange behavior, where some European countries still kind of cosplay as global powers. You've got France, with just a few islands left in the Pacific, trying to act like a major player across the whole Indo-Pacific. And in Britain, well, that phantom limb of empire was a huge driver of Brexit. This fantasy that they could just ditch Europe and pivot to a commonwealth that's really just a shadow of its old self. You see these old imperial claims pop up in the most random modern ways. Remember when Donald Trump wanted to buy Greenland from Denmark? He just dismissed their claim by saying some boat landed there 500 years ago. The funny thing is, the source material points out it was actually closer to 1,000 years ago, and apparently that still counts. It just goes to show you, the imperial way of thinking can definitely outlive the actual empire.
But this legacy isn't just trapped in the halls of power or in politicians' heads. Nope, it's on the streets. The ghost of empire is walking among us. You can see it in the faces of the people who call Europe home today. You see, modern migration to Europe isn't random at all. It follows the old trade routes, the old shipping lanes, the old lines of empire. All those pre-existing links, language, commerce, culture, they became the new pathways for people to move.
This colonial footprint is literally everywhere. It's why so many Algerians moved to France, Angolans to Portugal, and Pakistanis to Britain. And it's not always a boomerang effect from the colony back to the metropole. When Spain needed workers, for example, Spanish-speaking Venezuelans could just slot right in. Nobody had to learn a new language just to order a coffee. Okay, so this shared history is all around. But here's the thing. It is far from settled. The memory of empire isn't some nice, cozy source of unity. It's a battleground, and it's creating these deep, deep divisions both inside countries and between them. So inside a country like France, you have this massive political split. On the left, colonialism is seen as a source of profound shame, a crime against humanity, as Emmanuel Macron himself once said. But on the right, the focus is all on the so-called positives. You know, the railways, the schools, the churches, with maybe not so much mention of the plunder and repression that came along with them. And this creates this really fascinating divide between European countries. You've got the had empires, like France, who still kind of treat their former colonies as an informal sphere of influence. But for the had-nots in Central and Eastern Europe, countries like Poland, that kind of thinking sounds, well, it sounds dangerously familiar. It sounds a whole lot like Russia's claims over its former empire, which of course includes Ukraine. So all of this brings us to one last, really provocative question. We've seen how Europe's imperial past is shaping its present, but what if that history is actually a warning about its future? What if the roles are about to get flipped? For hundreds of years, the story was simple. Europe conquered the world. It imposed its will on everyone else. But today, in this new era of might makes right geopolitics, a lot of people in Europe feel like the tables have completely turned. There's actually a term for this new reality, a digital colony. It's a region that's become almost totally dependent on the digital platforms and infrastructure of an outside power, in this case, America. And the source we're looking at here suggests that calling it a colony might even be an understatement. So that leaves us with one final, pretty chilling thought. Europeans know from their own history how easy it is for a powerful force to dominate a weaker one. And if the age of empire is truly making a comeback, this time, Europe might not be the one doing the conquering. It might be the one getting conquered, which leads us to one last crucial question. Who is the colony now?